Have you ever wondered what it truly means to keep a promise? To hold on to a single thread of hope when everything else has unraveled? Today, we read diving into a story that feels like it's been lifted from the pages of history. A tale of love, loss, and the incredible power of a promise written on a piece of paper. It is a story that asks a profound question. How far would you go for the person you love? Our story begins in April 1865. The air is thick with the end of the Civil War. And a man named Thomas Hale walks out of a Georgia prison camp. He's a free man, but freedom feels like a vast, empty expanse. He has almost nothing to his name. Just $43 tucked away in his pocket and a single, precious letter from a woman named Eliza Crane. This isn't just any letter. For 2 long years, every single night in the grim reality of that camp, Thomas read her words. The paper itself is a testament to his devotion. Worn soft and fragile at the folds from being opened and closed countless times, her message was his lifeline, his North Star. It was simple, yet it held the weight of his entire world. Come back to me. I will be in Millhaven, Missouri, waiting. We can build something together. Those words weren't just a comfort. They were a command. They were the future. We can build something together. A home, a life, a world away from the horrors he had endured. So with that promise fueling every step, Thomas started walking. He walked north for 3 long weeks. Imagine the journey. The dusty roads, the changing landscapes, the nights spent under the stars with only that letter for company. Every mile brought him closer to Millhaven, closer to Eliza, closer to the life they were meant to build. He wasn't just walking. He was reclaiming his future one step at a time. The $43 felt like a fortune because it was the seed money for their new beginning. Finally, in May, he arrives in Millhaven, Missouri. He finds the house just as he must have imagined it 1,000 times. A quaint white fence, a bold red door that speaks of welcome and home, and a sturdy elm tree standing sentinel in the yard. This is it. This is the finish line. His heart must have been pounding in his chest, a mix of exhaustion, relief, and pure, unadulterated joy. He knocks on the red door, ready for the embrace he's dreamed of for 2 years. He's ready to see Eliza, but the person who opens the door is not Eliza. It's an older woman, a stranger. The hope that had carried him for hundreds of miles begins to tremble. The woman looks at him, perhaps with a hint of pity in her eyes. Thomas asks for Eliza Crane, his voice probably tight with anticipation, and then the blow comes. The woman's words are simple, direct, and utterly devastating. Eliza left 8 months ago. 8 months, an eternity. He's been walking towards a ghost. The reason is even more gut-wrenching. She tells him she got word that you had died in the camp. A cruel twist of fate. A piece of misinformation that shattered one life and sent another spiraling in a new direction. Thomas stands there, a living contradiction to the news that destroyed his future. He says, his voice likely hollow with shock, I did not die. The woman's reply is pragmatic, almost painfully so. I can see that. The reality of his survival is undeniable, but it doesn't change the facts. It doesn't bring Eliza back to the red door. The world Thomas had been building in his mind collapses in that single moment. The white fence, the red door, the life together, it all vanishes. But Thomas Hale is a survivor. He survived a war, he survived a prison camp, and he will survive this. He asks the only question that matters. Where did she go? The woman gives him a direction, a new sliver of hope. West, she says. She mentions a cousin in Kansas. And then she adds a detail that reignites the flame of his quest. She tells him that Eliza always talked about building a town somewhere. We can build something together. Her dream was still alive, just further away. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about her ambition, her vision. Thomas thanks the woman. There's no anger, no breakdown, just a quiet acceptance of his new reality. He turns around, leaving the image of the red door and the life that could have been behind him. He starts walking again. This time, he heads west. He checks his pocket. He has $41 left. $2 was the price of a dream deferred. But the most important thing is still there. The same letter, the one with the paper gone soft at the folds. Its message hasn't changed. Come back to me. And so he does. He is coming back to her. He just has further to go than he had planned. This is where the story truly becomes epic. It's no longer just a journey home. It's a quest across a continent. A testament to a love that refuses to be extinguished by war, by false news, or by distance. His journey is a powerful metaphor for unwavering commitment. Think about it. In a world where we can feel disconnected despite being constantly in touch, here is a man walking across a country, powered by a 2-year-old letter. He doesn't have a phone, GPS, or social media to track her down. He has a direction west and a belief in a promise. What's so compelling about this is Thomas's resilience. He doesn't curse his fate. He doesn't give up. He simply adjusts his course and keeps moving. His love for Eliza isn't a passive feeling. It's an action. It's the dust on his boots, the sun on his back, the steady rhythm of one foot in front of the other. He is the embodiment of the idea that true love isn't about finding the perfect person under perfect circumstances. It's about navigating the imperfections, the heartbreaks, and the detours, and still choosing to walk towards that person every single day. And what about Eliza? She thought him gone, mourned him, and then, true to her spirit, she set out to build something new. She didn't just wait. She moved forward with the same strength and vision that he fell in love with. She went west to build a town. She's not a damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. She's a pioneer, a builder, just like him. They are two sides of the same coin, separated by circumstance but united by a shared dream. The tragedy is that they are walking parallel paths. But the hope is that those paths will eventually converge. This story forces us to look at our own lives. What promises have we made? What are we willing to endure to keep them? In our instant gratification world, Thomas's journey feels almost alien. It's a slow, deliberate pursuit of a singular goal. It reminds us that the most worthwhile things in life often require the longest journeys. His $41 and a folded letter against the vast American West, the odds are staggering. But his determination is greater. The story leaves us with a profound sense of anticipation. We are walking with Thomas now. We feel the grit and the hope. We don't know if he will find her. We don't know what will happen when he does. Will she have moved on? Will she have built her town and a new life without him? Or will she see him walking out of the horizon, a ghost returned, and realize their promise was never broken? The ending is unwritten, and that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just Thomas Hale's journey, it becomes ours. We're all walking west with him, hoping, believing that a love this strong simply has to find its way. What do you think happens next? Does Thomas find Eliza in Kansas, or does his journey take him even further west? 6 weeks later, he found the cousin in Lawrence, Kansas. Harold Crane. A cautious, careful man who measured everything twice, he looked at Thomas for a long time before speaking. "Eliza is not here," he said, his voice flat. "She left 3 months ago." Thomas felt his heart sink, a familiar disappointment washing over him. He had been so close. "Where did she go?" he asked, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. Harold leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Thomas. "She found land further west, good land," she said. Water and grass, and a valley she claimed was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. She went to build her town. Alone? Thomas's voice was barely a whisper. The idea of Eliza, brave and brilliant Eliza, setting out into the vast, untamed West by herself was both terrifying and completely in character. Harold shook his head slowly. She took 2 families with her, the Millers and the Abernathys. Eliza never does anything entirely alone. She is like that. She gathers people. Thomas managed a small, sad smile. "I know." He knew her better than anyone, or at least he used to. He knew her ability to inspire, to lead, to create a community out of thin air. It was one of the things he had always loved about her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the worn leather pouch that held his remaining money. He counted it out on Harold's dusty desk. $41. He bought a sturdy-looking horse from Harold for $30 and rode west. $11 left. Not much, but it would have to be enough. For 2 weeks, he rode through the vast, rolling plains of Kansas and into the territory beyond. The sky was immense, a brilliant, endless blue that seemed to stretch on forever. The sun was relentless, beating down on him day after day. He followed Harold's directions, a crude map sketched on a piece of paper. But mostly he followed the description of a valley that was the most beautiful place Eliza had ever seen. That description was his compass, his North Star. He imagined her seeing it for the first time, her eyes lighting up, her mind already planning, building, creating. He found it on a Wednesday morning. The air was cool and crisp. He had been riding since before dawn and had just come over a high, grassy ridge when he saw it. He pulled his horse to a stop, his breath catching in his throat. He looked down and understood immediately what Eliza had meant. The valley was wide and lush, a vibrant slash of green against the drier plains. A sparkling creek, clear as glass, ran through the middle, its banks lined with cottonwood trees. To the west, a range of mountains rose up, their peaks catching the first golden rays of the morning light. It was breathtaking. A sanctuary. And in the very center of it all, he saw the beginning of something. 3 small, sturdy buildings, their freshly cut timber bright against the green landscape. A well being dug, a pile of dark earth beside it. 2 families, the men and women working together, tilling a patch of land nearby, and a woman. A woman standing in the middle of it all, her hands on her hips, looking up at the ridge. Looking right at him. It was as if she had known he was coming. As if she had been waiting for this exact moment. As if she had always known he would find her. Thomas sat on his horse, frozen, looking at Eliza Crane for the first time in 4 years. Her hair was longer, tied back in a practical braid, and the sun had tanned her skin. She looked stronger, more resolute, but she was still unmistakably Eliza. She looked back, her expression unreadable from this distance. For a long, silent moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly she raised one hand. It wasn't a wave of surprise or shock. It was a wave of acknowledgement, of certainty. A wave you give to someone you have been expecting all along. With that simple gesture, the spell was broken. Thomas urged his horse forward, down the gentle slope of the ridge. He rode into the valley, past the curious glances of the working families, and stopped just a few feet from where she stood. He dismounted, his legs feeling unsteady after weeks in the saddle. He walked to where she was standing. The space between them felt charged, filled with 4 years of unspoken words, of distance and longing. He stopped in front of her. He could see the faint lines around her eyes he hadn't seen before. He could see the strength in her gaze. "I got your letter," he said, his voice hoarse. She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "I know," she replied, her voice the same as he remembered, clear and steady. "You are late." He couldn't help but return her smile, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I had some difficulty." Her gaze softened, a hint of the old warmth in her eyes. "Are you here now?" she asked, her question holding more weight than the simple words suggested. He looked at her, at the valley, at the small, burgeoning community she was building. He looked at the future taking root in the rich soil. "I am here now," he said, his voice firm with a conviction he hadn't felt in a very long time. "Good," she said, her tone all business again, though he could see the relief in her eyes. "I need help building this." Thomas looked around, really looked. He saw the 3 buildings, the half-dug well, the 2 determined families working the land. He saw the creek and the mountains and the endless sky. He saw her vision. "What are you going to call it?" he asked. She turned her head slightly, considering the settlement. "I was waiting," she said softly. "I thought the man who showed up should have a say." Thomas felt a warmth spread through his chest. He looked from the valley back to her face, her name forming on his lips before he even thought it. "Call it Eliza." She was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. Then she shook her head. "That is too much," she whispered. "No," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "It is exactly right." She looked at the valley again, at the mountains bathed in morning light, at the life she was creating here. A slow smile spread across her face. "Eliza, it is," she said, her voice filled with a quiet pride. Thomas didn't need any more words. He walked over to the pile of tools near the well, picked up a shovel, and walked to where the men had stopped digging to watch them. He nodded to them, then plunged the shovel into the earth and started digging. $11. A shovel, Eliza, and the absolute certain knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be for the rest of his life. He was home. Have you ever felt like you were just drifting, following a path without a real destination? That was Thomas Hale. He wasn't a builder. He'd been a farmer's son, a soldier, a prisoner, and then just a man walking west, chasing the words in a letter. He had no idea how to build a town from scratch. But he knew someone who did. Her name was Eliza Crane. And when I say she knew, I don't mean she had a vague notion. Eliza had a plan. A real, honest-to-goodness plan written down in a notebook she carried with her everywhere. It was filled with pages and pages of details. She knew exactly where every single building should go, and more importantly, why. The main street was designed to run east to west, catching that first glorious morning light. The well was plotted in the one spot that would guarantee the cleanest water, and the schoolhouse? It was positioned perfectly, so the children could look up from their lessons and see the majestic mountains in the distance. This wasn't some recent idea. Eliza had been building this town in her mind since she was a little girl, dreaming of a place that made sense. A place that worked with the land, not against it. Thomas didn't grasp the depth of her vision at first. It took him 3 days. He was taking a break, and he happened to see her notebook, left open on a rock. As he glanced at the pages, he saw it. This wasn't just ink on paper. It was years of thought, of refinement, of dreaming, visible in every carefully drawn line and every precise note. He looked up from the notebook and saw Eliza across the clearing. She was directing the placement of a heavy support beam, her voice clear, her instructions exact. She moved with the confident authority of someone who wasn't just figuring it out as she went along. She had rehearsed this very moment in her mind 10,000 times. It was in that instant Thomas understood something profound. He hadn't just stumbled upon a woman named Eliza. He had walked into the physical manifestation of her lifelong dream. He had found what Eliza had been building toward her entire life. And somehow, he was now a part of it. Of course, a town isn't built by just 2 people. Eliza had brought 2 other families with her, the Garretts and the Webbs, each essential in their own right. Jonas Garrett was a true craftsman, a man who could look at a rough piece of timber and see its true potential, understanding what it wanted to become. Then there was Samuel Webb. Within 2 short weeks, he had a forge up and running, its rhythmic clang becoming the steady heartbeat of their new settlement, shaping the tools and hardware they needed. And his wife, Mary Webb, had a different kind of vision. She planted the very first garden on the sunny south side of the creek, a patch of green that promised food and a future. Amidst these skilled and visionary people, Thomas searched for his own place. He wasn't the strongest man there, nor was he the most skilled carpenter or blacksmith. He watched Jonas Garrett shape wood with an artist's touch and Samuel Webb command fire and iron. He saw Eliza orchestrate the entire symphony of construction. For a while he felt like just an extra pair of hands. But then, gradually, his role began to define itself. Thomas Hale was a finisher. It wasn't a flashy skill. But whatever task he was given, whatever project he started, he saw it through to the absolute end. He never cut corners. When he drove a nail, it went all the way home, flush and secure. When he fitted a joint, it was snug and perfect. When he raised a wall, you could be sure it was plumb, straight, and true. He took the scattered pieces of a job and brought them together into a completed whole. His work was solid, dependable, and finished. One evening, as the sun was setting and casting long shadows across their work, Eliza spoke to him. She was, as usual, writing in her notebook, her focus on the page. She said, without looking up, "You finished things." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Thomas, a bit surprised, just said, "My father taught me that. It's the one thing he always insisted on." Eliza paused her writing for a moment, though she still didn't look at him. Then she said, "It is the most important quality in a builder." She went right back to her notes, but the words hung in the air. He could tell she wasn't just making small talk. She meant it. And for Thomas Hale, the man who had been a soldier and a prisoner, the man who had been walking without a destination, that quiet acknowledgement was more than enough. He had found his place. He was a builder, after all. This story reminds us that everyone has a vital role to play. It's not always about being the leader with the grand vision. Sometimes, the most important thing you can be is the person who shows up every day, does the work, and sees it through to the end. The finishers, the quiet, dependable people, are the ones who turn a blueprint into a home, a dream into a reality. They are the foundation upon which communities are truly built. By the end of that first summer, the town of Eliza was taking shape. 4 buildings stood complete. The well was dug, finished, and providing clean water. The community garden was flourishing, its produce feeding the growing population. The forge was up and running, its hammer ringing out like the town's own heartbeat. And most importantly, 2 more families had arrived. Word had traveled the way it always did on the frontier, person to person, from one way station to the next. It was a story spreading across the land. The story of a valley and a remarkable woman building something real from the ground up. One of the new families brought with them a milk cow. Ruth Garrett, one of the original settlers, declared it the best thing that had happened since they first arrived, and no one disagreed. Fresh milk was a luxury that felt like a miracle. The other family brought a man named Silas Cook. He had been a schoolteacher back in Ohio, and as he looked around at the fledgling community, at the homes and the hope being built, he said simply, "I would like to stay." Eliza assessed him, taking his measure in the quiet, decisive way she had. She saw what he was, and just as importantly, what he was not. He was earnest, educated, and looking for a purpose. After a moment, she replied, "We will need a school by spring." Silas didn't hesitate. "I can build one," he said. Thomas, ever present and ever supportive, immediately added, "I will help you." And just like that, with a simple exchange of commitments, Eliza had a schoolteacher. The future of the town's children was secured. Everything was falling into place, a testament to their hard work and shared vision. But then came the problem. In the second autumn, just as the leaves began to turn and a crispness filled the air, a man named Cord Dillard rode into the valley. It was October. He carried with him a survey map, a territorial land claim, and the particular, unnerving confidence of someone who has done this before and fully expects to win. He had purchased a land grant from a territorial official back in Topeka. A piece of paper that supposedly gave him ownership of the entire valley, their valley. He was polite about it, which somehow made the whole situation feel even worse. He spread his map out on the table in Eliza's cabin, the paper crinkling in the quiet room. "You are welcome to purchase your lots from me at a fair price," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "I am not unreasonable." His words hung in the air, a threat disguised as an offer. He was treating them like squatters on their own land, the very land they had poured their sweat and dreams into. Eliza looked down at the map, her eyes sharp and analytical. She pointed to a date printed on the document. "Your grant was issued 8 months ago," she stated, her voice steady. "We broke ground 14 months ago. 6 months before your grant even existed." She then calmly closed his map, folding it neatly, and pushed it back across the table toward him. Her gaze never left his. "Mr. Dillard," she began, her voice low but resonant with an unshakable strength, "I have been planning this town since I was 12 years old." She continued, each word a piece of her story, a brick in the foundation of her claim. "I walked away from Missouri when the man I was going to build it with was reported dead. I found this valley alone." Her eyes flickered toward Thomas. "And then that man," she said, nodding in his direction, "walked over that ridge after surviving a Georgia prison camp and riding across Kansas with nothing but $11 to his name. We are not buying our town from you." Her declaration was absolute. There was no room for negotiation. This was their home, earned and built, not for sale. Dillard, however, was unfazed. He leaned back slightly, a small, condescending smile playing on his lips. "The law is the law, Miss Crane," he said, as if explaining a simple concept to a child. He believed his piece of paper from a distant official was the final word, but Eliza met his certainty with her own. "Yes," she agreed, her eyes flashing, "and we will use it." She turned her gaze to Thomas, a silent communication passing between them, a trust forged in hardship and shared resolve. Thomas understood immediately. He said, "I will ride to the land office in Dodge City tomorrow." He looked at Eliza. "Take the notebook," she said, pushing a thick, leather-bound journal across the table. That notebook was their true deed. It contained 14 months of their lives. Every measurement taken, every beam raised. The name of every family that had arrived, documented and dated. Every structure they had completed, from the first stake in the ground to the newly operational forge. It was the meticulous, undeniable record of their existence, their labor, their community. Thomas picked it up. The weight of it was more than just paper and ink. It was the weight of their collective hope. "I will be back in 10 days, he promised. Eliza's response was simple and filled with faith. "I know." The next morning, Cord Dillard watched from a distance as Thomas saddled his horse and rode out of the valley, the precious notebook secured in his saddlebag. Dillard turned to Eliza, a smug look on his face. "Your man cannot fix this," he said with a dismissive tone. He saw Thomas as just a man sent on a fool's errand. Eliza watched the trail where Thomas had disappeared, her expression unreadable. She then turned her gaze back to Dillard, her eyes clear and unwavering. "He is not going to fix it," she corrected him, her voice cutting through the crisp morning air. "I am going to fix it." A small, determined smile touched her lips. "He is just going to bring me the tools." In that moment, the true nature of their partnership was clear. He was her hands and feet, her loyal emissary, but the mind, the will, the unyielding force that would save their town, that was Eliza Crane. The battle had just begun. Thomas rode for 8 days straight, all the way to Dodge City. He walked into the land office on a Tuesday morning, the weight of an entire community on his shoulders. He placed Eliza's notebook on the counter, its pages filled with 14 months of hopes and hard work, and told the land agent everything. The agent, a man named Oliver Marsh, was thin, precise, and completely unhurried. He listened to Thomas's entire story without a single interruption. He then picked up the notebook, turning the pages slowly, his eyes scanning every entry. He asked just 4 questions, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. "Prior occupation without a formal claim," he said, his voice measured, "is a complicated matter under territorial law. Come back tomorrow morning?" That night, Thomas found the cheapest room in Dodge City. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He thought about Eliza, back in the valley, with Cord Dillard looming over them like a storm cloud. He thought about those 14 long months of labor, all of it teetering on the edge of a cliff. He remembered her letter. The words burned into his memory. "Come back to me. We can build something together." And in that moment, he made a decision. He stopped thinking about losing. Losing was simply not an option. He wasn't going to allow it. The next morning, Thomas walked back into the land office. Marsh was already there, with 2 documents laid out neatly on the counter. Prior occupation with demonstrable improvement and community establishment, Marsh began, constitutes a legitimate claim under the Territorial Settlement Act of 1863. Your notebook. He tapped the worn cover. Documents 14 months of continuous occupation and improvement by multiple families. Dillard's grant was issued after your settlement began. It does not supersede your prior claim. He pushed the papers forward. The first document is a formal prior claim filing for the town of Eliza, in the name of Eliza Crane as the founding settler. The second, he added, is a cease and desist order for Cord Dillard. Thomas felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He signed his name as a witness and carefully picked up both documents. As he turned to leave, Marsh spoke one last time. "You talked about her for approximately 40 minutes yesterday," the agent said. "It was not difficult to determine which of you had truly built the town. Thomas rode back in 7 days. 1 day faster than promised." He pushed himself and his horse, fueled by a purpose he hadn't felt in years. As he came over the final ridge in the early morning light, he saw it. Home. Smoke was curling up from the forge. The frame of the new schoolhouse was reaching for the sky. And there, tied right outside the meeting hall, was Cord Dillard's horse. Eliza was at the well, drawing water. She saw him first, and her body went still. Her eyes locked on his face, searching for an answer. Then her gaze dropped to the documents in his hand. A world of questions hung in the air between them. "Well," she finally managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. Thomas walked right up to her. He didn't smile, not yet. "Sign these," he said, his voice firm. She took the papers from him. And just like she did everything, she read every single word, slowly and carefully. When she was done, she took the pen he offered and signed her name, claiming their future, word by word. They walked into the meeting hall together, a united front. Inside, Cord Dillard was waiting. He had a coffee cup in his hand and a map spread out on the table. He wore the settled expression of a man who was used to waiting people out, confident he'd always get his way. Eliza didn't hesitate. She strode forward and placed the documents squarely on the table in front of him. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "This is a federal cease and desist order," she stated, "issued by the Territorial Land Office. Your grant does not supersede our prior claim under the Territorial Settlement Act of 1863. You have no legal standing in this valley." Dillard picked it up. He read it carefully, slowly, the way people read things when they are desperately hoping to find a mistake, a loophole, any little crack in the armor. But he found nothing wrong. The document was perfect, airtight. Defeated, he rolled up his map, picked up his hat from the table, and made one last attempt at intimidation. "This is not the last you will hear from me," he sneered. Eliza didn't even flinch. She met his gaze with unwavering calm. "Possibly," she conceded. "But it is the last you will hear from us on this matter. The town of Eliza is legally established and federally documented. Good day, Mr. Dillard." There was nothing left for him to do. Dillard turned and rode out, leaving the valley behind him. The immediate threat was gone. Thomas turned back to the room, his eyes finding Eliza. She was still standing at the table, holding the prior claim document in her hands, reading it again, as if to reassure herself it was all real. She looked up and met his eyes. "You did good work," she said, a rare and genuine compliment. Thomas shook his head slightly. "You built a case," he replied. "You kept the notebook, every detail, every entry. All I did was carry it to the right person." "That is what partners do," she said simply. Thomas looked at her, really looked at her. Standing there, in the meeting hall of the town she had named after herself because he had asked her to. In the valley she had discovered because she had never waited for anyone else to lead the way. Everything he had been holding back, all the miles and all the hardships, came pouring out. "I rode out of a prison camp in Georgia," he began, his voice low but steady. "With $43 in your letter, I walked to Missouri. I rode to Kansas. I rode here. I arrived with $11, a horse, and the absolute certainty that wherever you were was where I was supposed to be. I would like to keep being where you are, if you will have me." The words hung in the quiet air of the meeting hall. Eliza looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Outside, the sounds of life filled the silence. The rhythmic clang of the forge, the steady hammering as the school frame went up, the distant chatter of children coming out for breakfast. The entire valley was alive around them, a testament to what they had built together. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was practical, almost teasing. "I named this town after myself." Thomas felt a smile touch his lips. "I know. That means," she continued, her eyes fixed on his, "you will be living in a town named after me for the rest of your life." He didn't have to think about it. Not for a second. "I cannot think of anything better." And then it happened. Eliza almost smiled. Then she did smile, a real one. The kind of smile she didn't give easily, the kind that was so rare it meant everything when she did. It lit up her whole face, chasing away the shadows of hardship and struggle. "Yes," she said. Thomas exhaled a long, slow breath he hadn't even realized he was holding. The tension, the uncertainty, all of it just washed away. Eliza, ever practical, picked up the prior claim document from the table. The moment was over, but the future was just beginning. "We have a school to finish," she said, her voice full of purpose. She turned and walked out of the meeting hall, back into the world she had fought so hard to create. Thomas stood for a moment, letting the reality of her yes sink in. Then he followed her. Outside, the valley was bright and cold and entirely beautiful. The sun cast long shadows across the freshly built structures, and the crisp air was filled with the promise of a new day. The town of Eliza was still standing. And it always would be. Have you ever wondered about the stories hidden in the names of the places we call home? Every town, every street has a history, but some are more epic than others. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of a town named Eliza, and the powerful love that built it from the ground up. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a tale of adventure, resilience, and a romance that literally shaped the landscape. Our story begins in the mid-19th century, a time of great change and westward expansion. A young woman named Eliza, unlike many of her contemporaries, wasn't content with a life confined by society's expectations. She was fiercely independent, with a spirit as vast as the open prairies she dreamed of. Her family, though well off, couldn't understand her yearning for something more, for a life of purpose and creation. Eliza spent her days reading books on agriculture, architecture, and exploration, sketching out designs for a community where people could live in harmony with nature and with each other. It was a bold dream, one she held close to her heart. Meanwhile, a young blacksmith named Thomas was making a name for himself in a bustling city not far from Eliza's home. He was strong, skilled, and honest, known for his incredible work ethic and his kind heart. But like Eliza, he felt a pull towards a different kind of life. The noise and grime of the city were stifling his soul. He yearned for the clean air of the frontier and the satisfaction of building something lasting with his own two hands. His dream was to find a place where his skills could serve a community, where he could forge not just tools, but a future. Their paths were destined to cross. One fateful afternoon, Eliza's carriage broke a wheel right outside Thomas's smithy. While others might have panicked, Eliza was fascinated. She watched, captivated, as Thomas worked with a powerful grace, his hammer striking the anvil with a rhythm that seemed to echo the beating of her own adventurous heart. He wasn't just fixing a wheel, he was a master of his craft. When he looked up and saw her, he was struck by the intelligence and determination in her eyes. It was a look he'd never seen before. They talked for hours as he worked, discovering a shared vision for the future. A mutual longing for a life of meaning beyond the confines of their world. It was a spark that would soon ignite a legendary fire. That chance meeting blossomed into a deep and profound love. Thomas was mesmerized by Eliza's vision and intellect, and Eliza was grounded by Thomas's strength and pragmatism. They were two halves of a whole. Together, they made a brave decision. They pooled their resources, packed their belongings, and set out west, leaving behind the lives they knew to chase a shared dream. They weren't just eloping. They were embarking on the greatest adventure of their lives, to build a town from scratch. Their journey was grueling. They faced harsh weather, treacherous terrain, and the constant uncertainty of the unknown, but their bond only grew stronger. They relied on each other completely. Eliza's knowledge of planning and agriculture guided their path, while Thomas's practical skills kept them safe and moving forward. He built their shelters, fixed their wagon, and protected them from the dangers of the trail. She mapped their route, managed their supplies, and kept their spirits high with her unwavering optimism. Finally, they found it. A beautiful, untouched valley nestled between rolling hills, with a crystal-clear river running through it. It was perfect. It was the place from Eliza's dreams. They staked their claim and with their own hands began to build their future. The first structure they erected was a small, sturdy cabin, a home born from their love and labor. Thomas forged the nails and hinges, while Eliza helped him raise the walls and thatch the roof. This small cabin would become the heart of their new world. Word of their settlement began to spread. The first to arrive were a few families, drawn by tales of a fertile valley and a community built on cooperation and respect. Eliza and Thomas welcomed them with open arms. Eliza's plans, once just sketches in a notebook, became the blueprint for a real, thriving town. She designed the layout of the streets, designated land for a school, a market, and a public park. Thomas, in his new larger smithy, became the cornerstone of the town's industry. He crafted the plows that tilled the fields, the tools that built the homes, and the weather vanes that topped the roofs. He taught his trade to others, creating a generation of skilled artisans. The town grew, but it wasn't without its struggles. They faced brutal winters, summer droughts, and the ever-present challenges of frontier life. During one particularly harsh winter, when supplies were dangerously low, it was Eliza's clever rationing and Thomas's relentless work to reinforce the town as structures that saw them through. They led not with authority, but by example. Their home was always open, their food always shared. They were the heart and soul of the community, their love story the foundation upon which everything was built. As the years passed, the settlement flourished. It was a testament to their vision. It was a place where people from all walks of life could come to build a new life. When the time came to officially name their town, the choice was obvious to everyone. The townspeople unanimously decided to name it Eliza, in honor of the woman whose dream had given them all a home. Thomas was the first to champion the name, his voice filled with pride and love for his wife. The town of Eliza became a beacon of hope and progress on the frontier. Eliza and Thomas lived out their days in the town they built together. They watched children grow up, saw new businesses open, and witnessed their small settlement blossom into a prosperous community. Their love story wasn't just a private affair. It was the public narrative of the town itself. They were a living legend, a constant reminder that with love, vision, and hard work, anything is possible. Even in their old age, they could often be seen walking hand in hand down the streets that Eliza had designed. Their legacy etched into every building, every field, and every smiling face. Today, the town of Eliza still stands. The original cabin they built is now a museum, a protected landmark at the center of town. Thomas's first amble sits proudly on display. And in the town square, there's a beautiful bronze statue, not of a conquering hero or a distant politician, but of a man and a woman, Eliza and Thomas, standing side by side, looking out over the town they loved. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that history isn't just about dates and battles. It's about people. It's about dreamers and builders. And sometimes the greatest force for change in the world is simply a love story. So the next time you walk through your own town, take a moment to look around. Think about the hands that laid the bricks, the minds that planned the streets, and the stories that are waiting to be discovered. Because you never know you might be walking through a legacy of love, just like the beautiful town of Eliza. Thanks so much for watching this journey into the past with us. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from history. We love sharing these hidden gems with you. Let us know in the comments if your town has a special founding story. We'd love to hear it. See you next time.